Let's talk about Karmine Corp. Before last week, they were labelled the worst team in VCT off the back of some really embarrassing losses. During the downward spiral, the player Nuzera left the squad, and KC had to replace the player with their assistant coach, Zaish, who has absolutely no experience with playing at the tier 1 level as he's a coach. But Zaish comes in and helps KC win a tough series versus Koi, so let's look at the role he played on Haven and how this substitute coach managed to bring Karmine Corp back to life. We're going over the defensive side, and Zaish is playing Breach. The most common setup that you're going to be seeing for Breaches is typically playing in A Link. It allows him to not only stun for all of sewers and A main, but he can stun across into Garage if needed, especially if there's an alarm bot in there, or even just stun across mid. The first thing to highlight is the rather odd pistol buy, as Zaish has decided not to go for any flashes on Breach and instead gone for a Ghost and an Aftershock. Most likely to stop a plant or execute coming in, which we'll see a little bit of, but it's still weird to see a Breach without a flash. In the pistol round 2, Zaish also holds onto the stun. Some Breaches use it instantly on A main to try and take that space, but Zaish in this case was just holding onto it until Koi made a move. Nivera on the Omen peeks mid and dies pretty early on. But this is a nice play from KC as Scream, Zaish and XMS all go for a mid peek together to take a fight and catch Koi by surprise. Zaish actually is the one that picks up the kill. Scream and XMS do a good job to instantly rotate off of B to C just in case Koi decides to pick up the pace and head that way, but Zaish stays in mid and holds. Eventually Koi heads back over towards the A site, and we finally see some of that utility being used by the Breach. He stuns across the A site, hitting Graffiti and any players that are on the main box where the spike was planted, and then aftershocks across Hell, forcing Wolford to peek out into the oncoming traffic of KC as they head in for this retake. You see it from Scream's perspective, but KC do a really good job here at sticking together as they're going in onto the site and deathballing onto any Koi players who have to take these fights one at a time, which again is something that we're going to see quite consistently throughout this half as KC pick up the pistol. But as we move on to round 14, it wouldn't be Karmine Corp without a little light trolling, as they end up losing this round versus an eco. Shin is playing on the Sova and trying to hold on to sewers, which against potentially 5 pistols running at you is super risky. Shin is initially pushed off the angle in sewers and tries to shock dart it. Meanwhile, Zaish comes in with the stun to add a bit more stall. Unfortunately, the stun is a little bit late, allowing Wolford to slip past it unstunned, and he gets the kill onto Shin. Now KC are under a little bit more pressure now as they've lost a player, and Scream tries to push A long for a bit of information. Unfortunately, he runs right into Starkso, who's behind this box, who not only kills Scream, but peeks out and wins the fight against Zaish also. Guns are given up, and in an instant, Koi have planted the spike on A with guns and have a 3-player advantage. Round 15 and KC are now on their own eco. Koi used the raised boombot into sewers to maybe bait out a bit of early utility or clear some of those close corners that a pistol could be hiding behind. But Zaish again holds on to that stun, and after a little prodding and poking around on the map, Koi do head towards a B execute a little later on. Zaish now in C Link sees it coming, stuns across the choke and also aftershocks the plant, which stalls any player from Koi actually planting in a good spot for them. Once that plant eventually comes in, there's now 3 members of KC close by ready to attack. Zaish and Shin peek out, and while Zaish does die in the process, Shin does get the trade and a kill. And from this point, KC actually managed to win out a few of these fights with the theatrics from Scream and some good sheriff shots from the rest of the squad to win their own thrifty round with this retake. As we move on to round 16, Karmine Corp have another full buy, and Zaish pushes sewers with Nivera, who now has an operator. He's providing a bit of support and can stun or flash as and when needed. After that initial pressure, Koi do back off and try and poke around the map a little bit, and Zaish runs off of the A site to watch mid, expecting Koi to maybe go for a fast play after seeing the op on A. Luckily, Karmine Corp have a nice setup in Garage with the alarm bot, and as soon as Koi trigger it, the stun comes through from Zaish going across all of Garage off of the back of that alarm going off. It staggers the C split that's coming in from Koi if you look at the minimap, and that delay is also added onto a little bit more by a nice aftershock from the Breach that cuts across tunnel, again stalling these players in Garage and allowing Scream to take a few fights. We even see the aftershock appear on Scream's UI a little bit as he has to kind of get out the way of it. Now that Karmine Corp are fighting on the C site, a flash does come in from the Breach onto the C box, which does get a lot of attacking Koi players, but unfortunately timing isn't really on Casey's side here, as Scream has already peeked out a little bit earlier and dies just before that flash comes through. It's a common issue with Karmine Corp, and it's still rearing its ugly head in this series too. Zyche does get a kill from inside the Omen smoke and it's traded, and this 2v1 scenario is eventually won out by Karmine when Coldamenta teleports over to A on the breach. But Karmine finally get back-to-back rounds on this defense. Round 17 sees a bit more proactivity from Karmine and from Zyche specifically. This round he's over towards mid and uses the stun instantly onto second mid alongside an aftershock. This is usually where you'd see a killjoy turret, and the killjoy is also playing from this position. And this all plays because Nivera has the operator and wants to take a peek out of double doors. Unfortunately, the aftershock doesn't quite connect onto Wolfen for reasons apparently, and they decide to clear the turret instead. A minute passes and Koi head over for another A execute. KC are happy to play retake here, but whilst they're prepping, XMS goes a little bit too early, jumping down from heaven to try and take a fight and just gets demolished. Afterwards, the stun does come through from Zyche in a different position now, going from Graffiti into Short, whilst Shin pulls out his Silver ultimate, initially firing at Hell, and then across the site getting the Sage as she's stunned. On the attacking side of Koi, there's a really nice Omen flash that comes out from Coldamenta, who's in Hell, and it causes even more chaos for Karmine. They can't get their timings right, this fight ends scrappy, and eventually Karmine do get onto the site and win out the retake, but time is too low and the defuse can't come in with enough time. Koi retake the lead, and Karmine are forced to eco again with only saving the operator. But we've already seen 50 rounds be impacted, and to quote Scream at the end of this round, it was a risky play. The stun comes out instantly from Sewers, alongside a recon dart, and Nivera pushes up quite aggressively with that saved operator and catches onto Starkso and backs out. The Resurrect is dedicated, and Koi again tried to pressure around the map, but decide to execute on A again. At this point, Zyche only has a Sheriff, a flash and a stun, but that's really all he needs. For the retake this time, the timing is a lot better, as Casey managed to roll on. The stun comes through from Heaven, hitting Hell and across the site towards Long, and the flash also comes through just as Scream dashes in. XMS drops to the ground this time, getting a kill, and Karmine and XMS specifically redeem themselves after a previous round with a nice 3k here, and another 50 round picked up from Karmine Corp. Round 19 goes the way of KC again as they take the lead, but Koi call a timeout and KC start the round by fighting free towards A again. In these rounds, the stun is used instantly, and Casey put a lot of effort into fighting A main early. But after a brief fight, as Koi tried to execute, and a couple of players already going down from Casey, Zyche gets onto the site and preps a rolling thunder for when Koi come out again. The number are in Casey's favour still, but it does unravel again. Nivera's smoke onto Sewers isn't great here. As you can see from Shin's perspective, there's enough of a lip from this smoke where Shin can't quite see into A main, and as you're seeing through the X-ray vision, Wolfen can actually creep quite far out before he's seen, and with Koi playing the sky, the flash comes out the smoke, clears the common position that Shin's playing in, Shin dies, and then Zyche throws out the ultimate. And it does hit a few good players from Koi, it allows Zyche to get a kill, but he peeks out a little bit too wide without further support, and dies to Trex on an off angle. Considering Zyche had another stun, had flashes and more utility to work with, and there was no teammates with him anymore, it was a little bit of a sunk cost moment for Zyche, overextended himself trying to get some impact off of the ultimate. But Koi pick it up from here, pick up the round, and make it 10-all. Round 21 still has a full buy from Karmine as they retake B. The one thing I wanted to highlight was the stun peak combo that comes in from Zyche over on A. He stuns across the B site just as XMS peaks on the other side towards C, and it allows an easy kill onto Trex. The retakes come together nicely, but round 22 has another eco for Koi, so you could probably guess where this one's about to go. KC are starting to get a little obvious with their plays. When they stun across A main, it's usually because there's a player from Karmine that's pushing up, like Nivera with the operator or Scream in this instant. Every round that they've stunned early, KC have tried to make an aggressive play, and this is something that Koi might be aware of now and try to punish. They all go Sewers with the pistols that they have, and from a sky flash used by Trex, they know at least one player from Karmine Corp is Long. They wrap around and catch two players with frenzies as Zyche was bullied off of the angle and has to retake on A. XMS dedicates to Killjoy lockdown, and Koi are all forced into this little cubby on A, which Zyche tries to exploit. He stuns and aftershocks it, but unfortunately the timing doesn't quite work out yet again, and most of Koi can get out safely. A good amount of damage is done in the end, and KC are now in a 2 versus 1, but as Zyche was taking this fight, he's now only down to 1 HP. He tries to peek out wide, buy time for the defuse coming in, but he goes down instantly and Shados manages to win out this nice 2v1 clutch. So it's round 23, scores 11 all and KC are forced to eco again. Zysh only has a stun this round, no flashes, no aftershock, but that's all that he needs again. Koi try and play for A quickly, and Scream finds one early before backing off to play for another retake. From here, it's an absolute disaster for Koi as they're separated into these one-on-one fights against Scream. Zysh stuns across Hell and Backside, and Casey somehow managed to make this retake work with barely any weaponry and a full buy from Koi. They absolutely fumbled this round, and Casey managed to exploit it with some good spacing, some good utility, and another excellent retake. Which brings us on to round 24. Zysh starts off on B but quickly rotates over to C after some initial contact there. After stalling C long a little bit with the stun, Koi tried to make some space and then re-execute onto C a little bit later, but there's only 30 seconds left. Zysh aftershocks to plant spot, buying a bit more time and flashes onto the C box twice. The first one unfortunately fully flashes XMS who's playing on log, so he's lucky to be alive, but in the second flash, look at the fact that XMS faces away into the wall, then peeks out onto Shados who is completely blinded by the second flash onto the C box. Karmine Corp end up winning this round and winning the whole series. The game was wild. It all finished up about 2 AM local time in Berlin, and from some of the plays that we watched, it certainly looked like it. Both teams were exhausted, but considering the circumstances, Zysh played pretty well. He's not a pro player, we're not highlighting stacks and some of the amazing utility he has on Breach, but seeing how a coach comes into the squad, how they use utility and play around it, and ultimately how just keeping it simple and straightforward allowed Karmine Corp to just go for some really nice retakes consistently is definitely worth showing. It's such a bizarre story for this kind of thing to happen, but I definitely wanted to highlight a coach that came in, stepped up and played really well against pro players that are mechanically a lot stronger than he is. But honestly, didn't really show that much this series. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more breakdowns like it, do check out the channel and all of the videos shown. And until next time, take care. I'll see you then.